Comfortable. Okay, Mark meets John Treacy, the Executive Creative Director at Elvis. Hi John.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, thanks for inviting me in.
Pleasure.
Can you give us a very quick summary of your career today?
Okay, well I started off initially as a graphic designer doing CD covers for about 2 years.
What year was this roughly?
Well, that was 17 years ago now, so a long time.
Not revealing your age?
Not revealing my age, just giving you a rough kind of idea. And then started off at Grey Advertising, and then their kind of integrated subsidiary, which was G2. I was there for 4 or 5 years, and then I went to Archibald Ingle Stretton when it was a start-up, so it was only 10 people, so I was the first creative team in there. Left there after 5 years, did another start-up, which was Elvis. That was 10 years ago this year, so clearly got start-ups in the blood.
And what do you get for being here for 10 years?
I think the interesting thing is the agency's changed and the landscape has changed so much. So my job, I almost had a completely different job every couple of years, depending on the way the market was moving. So that's what's really kept it really interesting. Is I was quite lucky enough to get a job as a CD at a time when the industry was changing a lot. The last 10 years especially, I've seen so many massive changes, and that's what keeps it interesting and keeps me motivated.
So you're Mr. Integrated, really?
Yes, kind of. Yeah. Yes, I'm a specialist generalist, as it's been noted. So yeah.
What are your strengths? Where are your kind of real passions when it comes to media?
I think there's no great mystery behind this. It's just, is it a good idea or it's not? There's a lot of talk about whether it's a channel idea or whether it's above the line idea or below the line idea or a digital idea. I actually ultimately believe it's either good or it's not. And I kind of think that, hopefully what I bring is a kind of a sound judgment as to whether, an idea is going to live in lots of different channels.
Cool. What does Elvis mean to you today compared to when you first joined?
It's kind of more, I kind of think, for me now, having been here so long, it's a kind of real sense of ownership, actually. It feels like, it's my agency to a certain extent, when you've been at something at the ground level. So, you go from just running the creative department to having a much more strategic view of the business. And that sort of, is actually a really fulfilling job, I find. So it kind of feels much more like I'm, creatively directing the business as opposed to just the work these days. And again, that's kind of a really interesting space for me.
And how hands-on are you as a creative?
Not as hands-on as I'd actually like to be. I think every creative director will probably tell you the same thing. You never get enough time to do the work. New business I do an awful lot of work on, so that gives me the chance to still do some work.
Client-facing, I guess.
Sorry?
Client-facing.
Yeah, I do a lot of client-facing stuff as well. So I was hands-on as I can possibly be, but it's very important that I manage the team who are all doing brilliant work as well.
And what do creatives have to do these days to grab your attention and creatively grab your interest?
What, in terms of kind of recruitment and hiring? Or
I guess, on a recruitment level, but also on a kind of general good idea level.
I think a lot of creative teams. Excuse me, sorry, got a bit of indigestion. I'll have to edit that bit. I think a lot of creative teams can get sort of seduced by technology a little bit at the moment, and I kind of think the teams that always come at it from a really good strategic viewpoint. It might be completely out there, but a good strategic thinking is what I always look for in teams. And I think there's so many ways to express an idea now that when I look at teams' books, what I'm looking for is that really solid piece of strategic thinking up front, with a clear understanding of why they're using that particular channel to execute it, and seeing some real kind of knowledge there and some thinking that kind of scares me a little bit as well. Is always what I always look for. And
can you tell that from looking at a portfolio, or do you tend to prefer to have the actual creatives talking about their work, have a face-to-face with people to understand what the strategic vision is or was?
I think it depends how well the book's presented. Some creators are really good at presenting their books, or their website, and it's very clear. They can set the idea up really clearly. Some creators not so good. I kind of think that if I was looking to hire someone, the book is still only ever half the story. You do need to meet them, you need to understand their attitude, and I like to see creators with a real viewpoint on the world and a viewpoint on the sort of work that they think is good.
Do you prefer an old school book or online portfolio?
Online portfolios is just much easier to deal with. I know very hard. Well, I can't remember the last time I saw an old school book. When I say book, what I mean is your collection of work, whether that's online or wherever. But
yeah,
especially it just, if you don't have a website, I think as a team, then you are clearly doing something quite wrong before you started.
What are your thoughts on do you come from a copy or art background?
Sorry, I'm an art director by trade, so...
Okay. And what are your thoughts on the craft of both art direction and copy these days? Because there's a perception in the industry that the craft is not as strong as it was 10, 15, 20 years ago.
I think there's a bit of... I still see great examples of craft. I mean, like the Tesco long copy ads that were, written recently after... that was held up as a shining example of brilliantly written, copy. I think that I think the standard overall is higher than it was 10 years ago, which makes really outstanding work kind of harder to really stand out. Really, I think before you had really good pieces that really stood out because the general level I think was slightly lower. So I think we've raised the bar for the average work, which makes the really good stuff harder to stand out. I do think that in writing there is, I think, a little bit. Not of a crisis, but I think there's less emphasis on it. I think that we live in a very visual culture, and I think that the image has definitely sort of taken primacy in a lot of work. But that's not to say it's not dead. But yeah, it is. I think on the writing side, there's probably less great pieces of work being created than there was. But every so often, then you see something like a Tesco ad, and you think, yeah, people out there still doing it really well.
So are you here at Elvis as a solo creative, or do you have a partner?
I'm a solo creative at the moment. I've had partners my whole career, but sort of running a department that's quite big now means I've probably not quite enough time as I would like to do hands-on creative work. So, but I'm happy to kind of work on my own, but. I think
do you prefer working solo, or do you prefer actually working with a partner?
I think it depends on the size of the project. I think most of the time I'm more than happy to work solo, actually. And then I think the notion of a kind of set team is somewhat misguided in this day and age. I think that
totally agree.
Yeah, you need to be much more flexible than just an art and copy team. Whether it's art and code was the big idea that came out of Cannes last year, and I think there's a lot of kind of there's a lot of sort of there's a lot of merit to that way of thinking. Sometimes I work with a user experience planner, sometimes it'd be a writer, sometimes it might be a developer.
Creative strategist.
Exactly. So it's sort of the idea of a traditional team is something we're trying to move away from.
Yeah, that's interesting. A lot of agencies are also of a similar mindset, and it's quite confusing actually for a lot of junior creatives that are entering the industry today, because they are being taught a formula which worked 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago as part of a creative team. But obviously guys like yourself have expectations of solo creatives to be able to mix and match with each other, and an idea can come from anywhere. So it's an interesting time.
Yeah, it's difficult. I still see really good solo creatives coming out. I think there's definitely a new breed emerging that are technically very, very astute, but have a kind of really good conceptual side to them as well. I think it's really hard though when you're very junior to do it all yourself. I think it's quite a big ask. They're quite rare, those people. But what we find is after 2 or 3 years in the business, teams' careers sort of evolve and change, and they might decide to either work separately or be open to be working in an apartment where they know they're not going to be working together the whole time on set projects.
What's the most innovative way a creative or creative team have approached you to try and get in front of you?
That's a good question.
Excluding bribes, obviously.
Excluding bribes. Most creative way. Hang on.
Have you been sent stuff? Have you been?
I get sent so much stuff. It's kind of, it all blurs into one. After a bit, I think I'll have to think about that and come back to you.
Do you keep them generally? What do you do?
Yeah, there's actually. I mean, I look at everything. I think whatever I get. I always try to see whatever people email me or send, unless it's clearly very awful, because I think that you should, as a creative director, you're always on the lookout for talent in that, wherever you can find it. And sometimes you do find it in really odd places. So I try to put a proportion of my week which is about making sure I see those kind of those books. But I think it's tough for teams these days because there's always people that are gatekeepers to creative directors, and trying to get past them sometimes I think is pretty difficult.
Do you think it's harder than for juniors to get into the industry now compared to when you first entered?
I don't know if it's harder. I think the economic climate at the moment is really tough. People just aren't hiring. So I think right at this present moment in time, I think it's always been really hard to get in. But I think especially with the way the economy is at the moment, I do think it is pretty difficult. But I think that's where, as a team, your attitude will shine. That's what's going to make you different. There's lots of talent out there, but when you kind of meet people and you have them in on placement, and you can really see how they interact with other departments and how keen they really are, that's what I think tips the balance for a lot of creative directors.
What's the most embarrassing thing that's happened to you in your career so far?
Most embarrassing thing was we pitched for...
I love that you know this answer so quickly as well.
Do you know what? It's only because we were talking about it the other day. We pitched for Virgin Atlantic about 5 years ago, and at the time, I think we just had a summer party, and it was a fancy dress theme, and I think a few of us had dressed up as air hostesses. and our chief exec at the time, when we went down to the pitch, decided that as the backdrop to the opening slide of the presentation, he would use the photo of me as an air hostess as the first slide that went up in front of Virgin Atlantic, which they thought was hilarious, and I nearly died. So
the most important thing is, did you win the account?
No, we didn't. So there wasn't even a happy ending to that story. It was very funny though.
So you got embarrassed and wasted time as well.
Well, yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it wasn't a brilliant moment.
Great. What's the favourite brand what's your most favourite brand you've worked on?
Well, I think over the years at Elvis, we've always been very good at kind of challenger brands. So we've worked on 3 or 4 different Virgin brands. And I think Virgin as a brand philosophically, in terms of its idea around don't just play the game, change it. That was kind of very much part of the thinking behind when we started Elvis up. Actually, there's a kind of natural synergy there. So Virgin, we've done media, we've done trains, we've done holidays. Virgin as a brand, I think, really suits us down to the ground and gives us really good creative opportunities.
And have you personally met Richard Branson?
Not yet, no. He was on the shoot that we did for a commercial a couple of years ago, but he was, he's very kind of surrounded by his people. But it'd be nice to get the invite to Necker Island, wouldn't it?
That was my next question.
Yeah,
have you not had the invite yet?
No, not yet. I think he invites all the Virgin. I think marketing directors at some point get an invite out there.
Wait, what more do you have to do to get that?
I know. How many brands how much money do we have to make?
Exactly.
But no, that again. But he's Elvis has always been a very entrepreneurial business and an agency, and I kind of think that he is one of these kind of iconic business figures that we always thought when we started the agency, wouldn't it be great if we could do for our sector what Virgin does when it goes into a new sector? So.
Interestingly, what do you think, or what do you want the perception of Elvis to be externally in the market? I
think I would. I think people see us as we are quite a challenger agency. I think that we do have a slightly different approach. We're not a big network. I think that our sort of culture is kind of quite different, and the focus on creativity is different. So, I like us, to be seen as. Again, coming back to the Virgin analogy, as something a little bit different to, a lot of the other agencies that we look at and come up against in pitches and stuff.
What's the future for Elvis?
Well, I think the future is really exciting. We're on the cusp of hopefully, an international expansion plan. So exporting the brand, to different markets, getting to know those markets. We've already sort of started to do that. And it's an incredible journey really to think that we've rebranded some of our offices in North America now, in Canada, so and we have an office in Singapore. So I joined the agency, there was 6 people in a room, and now we have 6 offices globally, and I kind of think that's quite an amazing story to be part of.
Absolutely. How many people are there in the London office?
In London here it's 70.
Okay.
So the offices that we have in North America are slightly smaller. The one in Singapore, again, we've just got a new client out there, so it's a really From my personal point of view, being on the journey of a total start-up with no resources, all of a sudden being part of the group with Dare, having the international, kind of footprint that we have now, it's really exciting.
How long until you get the word global in front of executive creative director?
I don't know. I think we'll have to talk to Mr. Hammersley upstairs about that. But I think that's kind of a long way off yet. I think what my focus very much is on. I think that we've always been very keen that there is no point in doing the global thing if the mothership, if you like, the London office isn't as strong as it can be. So there's an awful lot of focus making sure that Elvis London is doing everything we can at the minute.
When you were climbing the ranks in your career as a creative, which agencies did you personally look up to? Which agencies did you look at and go, wow, they're the ones to...
Yeah, I don't think I've got a particularly original answer. Being an art director, I used to love the print that came out of BBH. BBH was always a kind of iconic agency for me. In America, I used to really like Goodby Silverstone, still do, still think they're an incredible agency. I think there was a sense of humour in the work that I always used to love. And Crispin Porter as well, I think, in America has always been an agency that I thought were particularly good.
What's your favourite ad campaign of all time?
Favourite ad campaign? I think I've got quite a few. Depends on sort of what day it is, really. I think The Economist is, for me, because they've managed such a brilliantly consistent, long-running campaign without even a kind of almost a recognisable end line. It's sort of, it just seems that, as a kind of pure piece of tone of voice, which I'm really into.
That's such a copywriter's answer.
Is it what I'm an art director?
You're an art director, I know.
This is what I mean. I think every art director is a frustrated writer, and every writer is a frustrated art director. Actually, no, most art directors are frustrated painters, and most copywriters are frustrated novelists. But again, I think in a way I admire it more because it's such a writer's campaign, because it's kind of like something that I'd love to aspire to be able to do. And I think for that reason it kind of, there's lots of brilliant visual campaigns out there, but actually for me, I think the consistency over time has been really impressive.
What's the best thing for you about agency life?
I think the best thing is working with really smart people. There's so many, you're surrounded by really, really bright people the whole time who are really on top of their game, and I kind of think that is really fulfilling. And I don't really, and lots of people start off in advertising, go off and do brilliant things, and I think that it's a great springboard and a great kind of place to meet really sort of smart people, and I think that's what makes your day interesting. So
even at your level, with the amount of experience you've got, you still feel like you are learning and challenged and that kind of stuff? Yeah, massively. Yeah. I think that if you're not, then you're doing something wrong. I don't think the work is ever finished. You don't sort of sit there one day and go, right, I'm done now, I know everything there is to know. I think that, especially as especially the advent of digital has meant that, if you're not learning, if you're not being kind of inspired and learning every single week, then what's the fun of the job, actually? The fun is not having meetings all day long. The fun is, is actually thinking that, you're working with the best people you can possibly work with, who are inspiring you and educating you in a way, and hopefully then you can pass that on to people who work for you as well. Who inspires you?
I sort of look outside of agency life for that sometimes, because I was actually a frustrated architect. I nearly did architecture, so okay. I didn't quite have the maths for it, although I might do now. But people like Zaha Hadid, I kind of like. I'm a bit of a sort of architecture geek, so that sort, that kind of scope of thinking and that kind of scale of work, I find really inspiring. And basically because she's kind of a theoretical architect as well, and sort of redefined how buildings are built. That sort of stuff I find quite inspiring. And I think Bowie's really another interesting example of someone who's just recently stage managed his career so brilliantly throughout the last kind of 30 years and never succumbed. Like, he never did the Olympics. He says no to everything, and he's incredibly kind of single-minded about what he's about as a brand, actually. So I think that he's another kind of quite inspiring figure. What do you get up to in your spare time? Spare time, big Spurs fan, which is sort of a hobby, sort of a curse. Yeah, Spurs fan too, good man. So all about that pain. Although I'm an art director, I do love words, so I have a couple of screenplays that I've had on the go for a little while now. Hopefully that will come to something, might not do. But Elvis is a pretty full-on role. There's not a huge amount of free time, but where I can, I try and keep as fit as possible as well.
Season ticket holder at Tottenham?
No, actually, do you know what? It's my one ambition left. I'm 40 this year, and every year we all go probably about 10 or 12 times, and we always think, shall we commit to a season ticket next year?
Have you ever had a season ticket?
No, I never had one actually.
Where do you normally sit?
Usually in the East Stand Upper.
Oh, cheap seats. They are the cheap seats. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. Okay. I'm North Lower.
North Lower. Oh, North Lower. Oh, yeah, well, that's a good spot, but... yeah, it's there's four of us that been going for years, and we've been a bit slack actually this season. This season's been bad from an attendance point of view. I think after the first 4 games, we were like, "Ooh, is this going to work?"
Sometimes I forget my roots. If I'm sitting west lower, I forget where I come from.
Yeah, yeah, it is quite an interesting experience being a Spurs fan, but it's been good. Yeah, I think actually we can just hold on there for the next few weeks, we'll be all right.
Yeah, we're going to throw it away again. Let's move on to a quick fire round.
Go on in.
Can line or D&AD pencil?
I think pencil.
Olympic gold medal or an Oscar?
Olympic gold medal.
The brightest person you've worked with?
Brightest person, probably Andy Nairn, who's the old executive planning director at MCBD.
Most creative person you've worked with?
Most creative, probably Tom Tagone, who's just directed the Meet the Superhumans ad. We were a creative team for a bit. He was very good.
Nice. Best looking person you've worked with?
Too many to mention. I think Elvis in the early days was known as Hollyoaks.
I think it still is in a way, no?
Well, I don't think it's... Well, standards have slipped, but I think I couldn't name one.
Fair enough. Creatives or suits?
Creatives.
Apple or Android?
Apple.
Ant or Deck?
Ants.
Spice Girls or Girls Aloud?
Oh, Girls Aloud.
Facebook or Twitter?
Twitter.
Digital or analogue?
Digital.
Favourite flavour crisps?
Ooh, pickled onion, Monster Munch.
Take That or Westlife?
Oh God, neither.
Degree or no degree?
No degree.
Art directors or copywriters?
Art directors.
The Only Way is Essex or Made in Chelsea?
Oh, I'm not even going to answer that.
Retained work or pitch work?
Retained.
Web or mobile?
Mobile.
Independent agencies or networked agencies?
Depends on the network.
Interesting answer. Outsourced production or on-site production?
Depends on the project.
Sitting on the fence.
Yeah.
Don Draper or Roger Sterling?
Oh, Don Draper.
And lastly, twist or stick?
Twist.
Thank you very much.